Hello and welcome to Inside Tennessee Football's practice facility. I'm Ryan Sylvia, joined by Noah Taylor. We are with VolReport.com on the Rivals Network. And today was defensive line day. After practice, we had Rodney Garner and then some interior guys, some Leos, talk with us about kind of where they're at right now in the offseason as we're under a month away from the season. Let's start with what D-line coach Rodney Garner said, though. What was your biggest takeaway?
Yeah, just kind of him talking about where this defensive line was. And you can really say this about any position coach at Tennessee now that's been on this staff here now in year 4. But where they were when he arrived, what they've built it into now. Obviously got some depth up there, a lot of experience returning. It went about as you expected. There's a lot of praise being heaped on this Tennessee defensive line, particularly James Pierce there at that Leo position. And he was as complimentary as Rodney Garner could be about it, but it was just interesting to hear him talk about where they're at now. He's even gotten kind of the point where he's been able, I think, to reflect and really appreciate what they've been able to build there. And obviously it should be a strong suit for Tennessee, but talked to a lot, did the Rodney Garner spiel about they still need plays to go. But yeah, definitely complimentary about a lot of guys up there. James Pierce in particular, of course, said there's some things he still needs to grow in. Play like a pro every day was one of those quotes. But it was just interesting to hear him talk about where they've been, where they're at now. Obviously a group Tennessee has a lot of high expectations for this year. But certainly has been built up into one of the better defensive lines in the country.
Yeah, they were asked about kind of like, hey, all this outside praise that this group's getting, how do you deal with that? And he's like, well, who's praising them? Because I'm definitely not right now, which is a really on-brand Rodney Garner answer. He's one of the kind of old-school tough coaches that Tennessee has on its staff. But yeah, James Pierce Jr. talked about how consistency is kind of the biggest thing right now. Coming in every day, coming in every play, every snap, every whistle, and doing things the right way. And like you said, playing like a pro. Yeah. He said that you can't have those roller coasters where you go up and you go down. It needs to be consistent. And James Pierce, if he can do that, if he can consistently play at the high level that we've seen him play, then he will be that number one pick in the draft, like people have talked about him possibly becoming. We'll flip over to what the players had to say now, though. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, Jackson Moy is a guy that, kind of came in there from the transfer portal. Speaking of depth, added some depth to that defensive tackle position. I thought it was interesting, kind of going back to Rodney Garner, but we asked him about what's his role kind of been, what'd you see out of him out of the transfer portal. So we were excited to bring him in, but kind of had a plan for him. You'd imagine because of the depth there, that plan probably included, getting his feet wet this year in the SEC. And he said he's impressed them to the point that he's kind of had to deviate from that plan. But obviously asked Jackson Moy about it, and he felt like the spring is where he had a chance to really kind of, obviously a new arrival then, coming from Stanford, but said he had a chance to turn some heads there, took advantage of that. And even Joshua Josephs. Of course, Josephs kind of ran down the entire defensive line for us, that entire group. But Jackson Moy, one of the guys he said has stood out as well. It kind of seems like a guy that could really vie for early playing time in that rotation there, defensive tackle, despite a lot of the experience they have there.
Yeah, you hit on the defensive line. I'll hop to the edge where, as you just mentioned, Josh Josephs, he was going through the whole line. It kind of fired me up just listening to him go through every single guy on that defensive line depth chart. And started with the interior, and he listed probably about 6 or 7 guys, and he was like, that's just the interior. Move to the outside. Of course, you got James Pierce. Like, what are you going to do about that? But then we have this guy, and just how deep that group is. There's a lot of confidence that he had in what that group could accomplish. And of course, Rodney Garner, his whole mentality of wanting to use a lot of guys and staying fresh and having that advantage over an offensive line that's played every snap of the game, and you have a defensive lineman that's just as good as that first string guy coming in to kind of provide a fresh breath. That's a big deal, that to have so much depth and to have guys kind of buy into it too. I feel like is a big deal. He also talked about kind of that rabbit package that they use and how much he likes it when him and James Pierce are both Leos, but there's those times where maybe both of them can see the field because James Pierce slides in towards the interior and they kind of use that fast package. And there's just a lot of things that I think this Tennessee defensive line could do with all the pieces they have. And they've always had a good defensive line. I feel like that's always been maybe one of their strengths on defense since Heupel got here. Some questions in the secondary. Of course, a lot of questions early about the linebacker room when Heupel first got here. But the defensive line's always had some guys. When you look back, just kind of even in that year one in 21, that was probably the strongest part of the defensive line. Well, even with that said, this is probably the best one they've had so far and could really, I think, help the secondary that's really young this year. If you get to the quarterback early with just 4 rushers, that can make that secondary's job a lot easier. But that'll do it all from us here today inside the practice facility. We will be back tomorrow for more practice and more interviews. And then Friday, Tennessee's holding their first kind of official scrimmage of the fall. We'll talk to Josh Heupel afterwards and get the complete rundown of what went down inside Neyland Stadium to be up to date on everything fall practice, photos from the facility, notes and observations from practice, highlight videos of what we saw. Everything you need to know is over at VolReport.com. Links to everything you need is in the description. Thanks for watching.